So let's get started. Welcome back, everyone. I guess it's a little sunny out and we may have lost a few bodies to the sun. We can't blame them for that. That's part of your memory health too, isn't it? Making sure you get out some fresh air, some exercise. But so today we are back for our third and final installment of our memory boot camp. So thanks everybody for coming back. So as is per usual now, I'll just go over the roadmap, I guess, of where we've been and where we're going. So, we started with the user's guide to memory, and you recall we had a lot of focus on spaced retrieval last week. So say it again, Sam, is just maybe a pithy way to help you remember that. And today we're going to move on and get kind of more dug into something called deep linking. Okay. So, to start, let's do a review. Also with our goals today is we're going to go over last week's homework. So learning names. Remember I asked you to see if you could learn the names of 3 new people. And the memory path, we asked you to kind of start just having an idea or getting an idea of what your memory path might look like. Then we'll go into the nuts and bolts of deep linking and kind of see if we can package it all together for you nicely at the end. So, the 3 R's to a good memory.
Recording and retrieving.
Receiving, that's the attention, right? Being able to pay attention to what's going on. Lots of different things that are connected to that, but how can you receive the information? Filtering out the unimportant stuff, paying attention to what you want to. The recording bit, so how do those memories get laid down in our memory, that big wide net we said, right, to think about how that gets laid down in your brain physically and what you can do to kind of keep it healthy. And then retrieving, so that's that effortful act of pulling that information up that you kind of recorded before, right? Very good. Homework review. So, who here, if you want, of course, entirely optional, by show of hands, did anybody go out to learn 3 new names this week? Very good. So a lot of you did that. That's great. Would anybody like to share their experiences on using the spaced retrieval? And maybe even tell us a little bit about who they were and what you did with it? Anybody?
You mean in relationship to the 3 names?
Yeah, like how did you do with the spaced retrieval part? Were you able to use that part? And who were they? If you want to share, like remember we kind of encouraged you to maybe remember the name of somebody at the store, or remember who served you some food at the restaurant, or so if you just give us a little bit of background on that, if there's anybody who wants to share there. Just one in the back there, yes.
What I found was, when I went to Superstore, the young lady who served me, she had a name tag, of course. I didn't ask her, but I saw the name. I made the connection with where she was working and where she was in the short line.
Mm-hmm.
Then I made the connection with a niece that has the same name, and she deals with people in a different way. And then the other person I met was at the restaurant, one of the young women serving, and that person's name. And I made the connection, of course, with her, with the place, the restaurant, and also, again, with somebody else with the same name who works in the same field, but is also dealing with food. Yeah.
So you moved on to session 3 already.
Well, I have a little background.
Yes.
I've been
That's right.
Gail before.
Very good. So you've already moved into the deep linking phase. Did anybody try just using it with the spaced retrieval in terms of repeating, and then giving yourself a longer gap, and repeating the name again, and then giving yourself a longer gap and repeating the name?
I did.
You tried that?
Yeah, I did. Actually, it's kind of a sitting duck situation because I was in a nursing home visiting my husband, at a sing-song, so the people were all lined up, so it was easy, right? I took 3 women whom I see frequently, but I didn't know their names.
Uh-huh.
The leader said their names, so I said them, and then 10 seconds later, I said them again, but they didn't move, so it was easy, right? And then 5 minutes later, I said them again, and every 5 minutes for the hour that I was there. And then the next day, I saw them and I knew their names.
Very good. Excellent.
Perfect.
Would anybody else like to share their experience with that? Yeah.
The day after I was here, there was a person who I met at my own house who'd come in to do a job. And I remembered her name, but by the evening, I had no idea where I met this woman. It had been like in the morning, and I was off and running, you know, usually the day feels like I've passed 6 by the time 10 o'clock rolls around. But it took me a while to remember where I'd seen her. And then the other 2, one was in a bridge class, a person that I'd never met before. And the third one was a student who had the same name as her friend did, so I remembered the 2 Sophies. But what I found was that throughout the week I was continually rehearsing these names and remembering where I met them, but then also paying a lot more attention to other people's names as I met them, you know, once my homework job was done. And so a lot of it had to do, for me anyway, it was with rehearsal.
Excellent. Yeah.
It was a wonderful week to meet new people because of the election coming up, so you were meeting all kinds of new faces. And I met one person, and I thought, oh, I'm going to remember your name. And I linked that person with my son because he knew my son, and he therefore knew my name and recognized me, and I thought, oh, I'll remember your name. But by that evening, I had his last name because I'd made another link, I think, knowing his father. But I couldn't remember whether his first name was Patrick or David.
Mm-hmm.
And I haven't been able to figure that out. So it didn't work for me.
So it sounds like, again, you kind of jumped ahead to session 3 for some of the deep linking parts.
I just was trying to have a memory practice.
And that's a natural,
And it
that's
didn't
an
work.
absolutely natural process. And so one of the feedbacks you might be able to take from that is that when you do the rehearsal part, so remember, part of the spaced retrieval is about the effortful recall of the information, which initially, to help the best, you want to do it over short intervals. So to start, start practicing, was it Patrick or David?
Patrick or David.
So was it Patrick or David? So after 10 seconds, after you've gotten his name, if you can rehearse, his name was Patrick.
Well, I got the last name. I kept the last name, but it's the first name in my
Right.
name, and that's not going to work.
Yeah, so just, if you shorten the practice and then lengthen it, you might have more success. So your challenges with these things are actually good feedback for you too. And it doesn't necessarily mean to, abandon the process, because it does take a lot of practice. These are new tools you're learning, right? You wouldn't expect to be able to, if you've never ridden a bike before, you'd never expect to be able to ride a bike right away and do it perfectly. In the fall, you're going to have little bumps and bruises, so that's okay, right? Just find what works best for you too. Pick your bike, and hopefully we give you a few bikes to pick from. And then just practice using it and use that information as feedback to maybe how you got to practice a little differently. Good, very good. So the other piece of homework we asked you to do is to come up with a memory path. So, and by the memory path, what we really wanted, if you recall, was to find, kind of in your memory, some place. Often, a home is quite popular, but some place that you're very familiar with, that you could have, 15 to 20 stops that you could go to in order and in the same order every time. That it would be very predictable and very easy for you to go step by step through a house, for example, to each room, even within the room, to look at a couple places that would always be in the same order. and that would be very familiar to you, so very easy for you to recall. How did everybody do with that? Was everybody able to kind of pick one of those places? Does anybody have any questions about that that we could use to clarify? I know you maybe not quite sure what you're going to do with it yet, and that's what we will get into. But just in case there is any confusion around that, I want to make sure, because maybe you have a few minutes now to maybe at least pull one up if you don't have one already.
I used a grocery shop.
Great. If it's a grocery shop that you're familiar with, perfect.
I did a route to, I visit my sister at Northwood, and I can go different routes, but which I like to do, but is
Yep.
that this?
Anything will do. Anything that kind of allows you to have some sort of almost like spatial
Yeah,
representation in your mind
Yeah.
and separation, where you can put things basically in different places. So it doesn't have to be a house. It can absolutely be, absolutely. You know, another place I could probably do it is where I grew up, out in the prairies. There's a forest and that I could literally probably come up with 30 to 40 places that I could walk through, if I walked through, and I could see them all. And that worked just as well. So it's whatever you're familiar with, that you're very familiar with, and that you can do repeatedly.
See, I probably, excuse me, I should have probably asked the question when that was assigned, because I was confused. I just basically used my apartment, but it's places I instinctively, automatically, it was like an automatic, I go from here to there, and then ordinarily I'm up there. This is what I'm doing, and that's what I'm doing. It was that kind of experience. But it was a routine that I do, and it's a place to go. I'm very familiar with my own place. But it's like I've told people, you could set a clock by me because I'm so routine with things.
Then that should work just great. Yeah? So, with that in mind, I'm going to pass things over to Dr. Eskes, and we'll continue on deep linking.
Thanks. All right, let's see if this is working. Doesn't sound like it is. Is it? Yeah, hey, it is. Yeah, it is. You want it up a little? I think I know how to do that. Nope, that's the light. I don't
That's
know.
what I did.
Turn it just a tiny bit. Okay. All right, how's that? Okay, great. I don't have the booming voice as Ryan does. Okay, so what we're going to get into today, and I heard a little bit about this as you folks were talking about doing the space retrieval. Paying attention. Someone mentioned I've now been paying attention more to the names that I was trying to remember. Really critical. And extended processing. I've heard a lot of people trying to link the name that they're trying to remember to something that you already know. Very important. And what we're going to talk about today is how you can use that systematically with one strategy. It's not the only strategy, but here is one strategy that's really powerful and used a lot that you can just pull off the shelf when you need it. Okay, and we'll talk about how you might use it later too. The key is in this paying attention and linking is you're calling on your semantic memory. Remember, the one that isn't as affected as we get older, to help reinforce your day-to-day memory, your episodic memory. And so you're creating rich links, you're creating a multinodal fishing net to make it easier to retrieve later. And remember the list we did in session 1? How some things were easier to remember together? It's the same idea, that when you have associations among information, it's easier to retrieve it. Now, mental imagery, that is creating pictures in your mind, actually forms quite a bit of a foundation for a number of techniques that we can use for deep linking or making associations. And for some people, mental imagery is really easy, and for others, they find it more difficult to create those pictures. It is another skill, as Ryan says, that needs a bit of practice to get efficient at it. But it's, with practice, very, very effective, this linking information together with a mental image. And in fact, this is what we're going to practice today. This technique is very, very powerful. I don't know if you follow the memory championships, But if you haven't, you should just Google that online.